We are happy to announce that this episode of the SWW show is partially brought to you by Humble Bundle. Well, not really. We are part of the Humble Bundle referral program, and we just wanted to say that if you like really cheap games and maybe helping charity pending the Humble thing going on, all you have to do is go to humblebundle.com/?partner equals SWW. That's right, humblebundle.com/?partner equals SWW. And you just do your normal stuff, and it just kind of helps us get a couple bucks here and there. Maybe it helps AJ get his lights, maybe it's Mike camera, maybe we actually pay Corey for helping us out. But again, if you're going to go buy games anyway, it might be worth checking out. Perfect. Hello, everyone, and welcome to one of these interview episodes of the SWW show. Today, I have with me a special set of guests from a game that honestly, I feel like is not being talked about enough, and with a license, I think is very interesting. To get us started, do you two mind introducing yourselves? I guess we'll start with you, Mark, kind of, and if you don't mind, kind of starting like introduce yourself and the game we're here to talk about today.
Yeah, sure. So my name's Mark Hardesty. I'm a senior producer at Slitherine Games over in the UK. And one of the games that we're producing is Terminator Dark Fate Defiance, which is coming out this year. It's a real-time strategy game, obviously PC only, and it uses the Terminator license. It's the Dark Fate license that we have. But I'll sort of get into sort of the story and how that impacts on the game sort of structure itself. Yeah, that's me. Julia, do you want to?
Yes, I'm Giulia Sellitto. I am the senior brand manager on Terminator Dark Fate Defiance. And I work in the marketing team of Slytherin, and we are Italy based.
Yeah, so for people who don't know kind of as I guys here, right? It's you guys are Slytherin who I feel like I really hear you guys obviously strategy games and tactical games, and like it's a name that I feel like we keep hearing on and off doing this. But I'm still kind of curious because it's, as you said, this is a game that based on my understanding, and please do correct me if I misunderstand this, it's Terminator Dark Fate Defiance, so it's at least related structurally or related plot-wise to the most recent Terminator film and that license. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct. I mean, a little bit about the company. I mean, we've sort of been around over 20 years. We do sort of, we have focused on kind of war games, turn-based games, kind of sort of strategy games. Recently, we have been doing some more sort of license-based games as well. A few years ago, we had a Battlestar Galactica game came out, which the community seemed to love. Is very successful. A year or so ago, we released Starship Troopers Terran Command, which is using the Starship Troopers movie license, which has done very, very well for us. It's kind of it's one of the best sort of it is the sort of best-selling game that Slytherin have had. Many thousand units have been sold on that, and so we're kind of moving into these kind of sort of larger franchises at the moment. So we have Terminator Dark Fate coming out. And we also have a Stargate Timekeepers game using the Stargate license coming out very soon as well. So, even though we still produce, militaristic and kind of sort of turn-based games, we also have a sort of a slew of titles that are sort of more kind of mass market appeal licenses as well. And yes, it is, as I say, it is the latest movie from 2019. I say latest movie. It's a few years ago now. Terminator Dark Fate.
Yeah, like, and also like I do think kind of, especially when we talk about, like, as we said, you guys' background really is like in these war games kind of, and like Terminator in a lot of ways is a license that like we experience the like post-war parts of it, but obviously there is wars kind of in Terminator kind of inherently in that world. How did that kind of translate? Because obviously you guys had to talk to the license holder, get rights to this license, kind of, and like, how has that relationship been, kind of, as you guys are developing this thing that's to obviously fit within Terminator world as a whole, but still is your own guys' like narrative and section of the story?
Yeah. So there's a company, Skydance, who own the Terminator Dark Fate, who produced the movie. So they're who we are working with. Yeah, there are people behind the scenes who also own the Terminator franchise as well. So you have a couple of layers of input. But they've been great. They've sort of allowed us to do what we wanted to do. One of the things, because it is the Dark Fate universe and the Dark Fate timeline from the latest film, one of the things we sort of did was the place where the story is set. So that the movie, majority of Terminator movies are sort of split between present day, usually Los Angeles, and obviously, we sort of get flash forwards to the future war as well. But one of the things we've sort of done is we've sort of sat the game in the middle of those two. So it's not present day in any way, and it's not the kind of the future war that we see. It's the period in between. So it's kind of, the game actually starts just a few weeks after Judgment Day. So it's kind of humanity's on the edge of annihilation. The machines are kind of on the verge of wiping us out and taking over. And we then jump kind of 10 years after that to see how the survival of the human race is going. So it gave us loads of freedom. And it meant that we weren't sort of stepping on any toes, because if we wanted to introduce a new unit, a new kind of machine type into the game, it wasn't that we had to sort of link up to a movie. We had the sort of flexibility to sort of tell the story we kind of wanted, really. So it's kind of realistically, there aren't any characters from Dark Fate, the Terminator Dark Fate, that we have in the game, or at least the demo hasn't shown any characters from the movies that are in the game. And it gives us a freedom. And the Skydance have been great. They had input on the story that we sort of follow in the game, and they've. I personally, I have kind of weekly meetings with Skydance, where we sort of talk through the current state of development and how the story's going, and sort of tweaks to the story, and sort of discuss new ideas. So it's been a really kind of collaborative process with them as well.
I find it interesting too. Like, you guys are in this really interesting space of, as we've talked about, it's like an existing IP, but like the things people think about as an IP of like the main characters obviously can't really be in your experience because of the timing, but like the abstract of like the Terminator and all this kind of like the like base soldiers we've seen in the films. How did you guys kind of, while thinking of this, and we'll kind of get into how the game plays in a second, kind of make sure you kind of balance that line of visually this still has to look like what we think these Terminators would look like, but like you still had that play of, oh, it's our own things, what we can make with.
Yeah. Well, there's a lot of. I mean, in the Dark Fate, in Terminator Dark Fate, we have the Rev 9, which is sort of the latest Terminator, which has sort of, it's kind of liquid skin and sort of, a skeleton within that can sort of split. So that was Rev 9, which is sort of at the time of the movie's future war, was one of the sort of top infiltrator Terminator units. So in the game, we have Rev 6s, which is the sort of top level. So it allowed us to sort of look at what the Rev 9 looks like and sort of retro create a unit that is not quite as advanced as that, but has, that is very similar looking. And also we have kind of Rev 1s, which is kind of the sort of bipedal Terminator type that we see very early on. And these are kind of again, it's kind of looking at what people perceive as Terminator. You know, the majority of people will look think of Terminator T800. It's Arnie. It's the classic Terminator that has been around for decades. So it's kind of constantly trying to tip our hat to visuals that feel Terminator, but just because we're in a slightly different timeline because of the movie it's based on, just giving it a slightly different spin. But I was very kind of keen to try to capture the feel of Terminator, like the first mission that you go on, which is kind of almost a prequel to the game. It's kind of a few weeks after Judgment Day. It was trying to just give the feel of Terminator. So there are, it's kind of a feel of a ruined city at night, blue lighting, purple lasers flying everywhere, kind of the Rev ones, so kind of almost kind of classic Terminator looking machines fighting there. So it's really wanting the player to take on, yep, this is Terminator. It's the feel of Terminator. The sound is kind of taken from the movies, so that like the lasers and the shots kind of should feel like you're in the movie. But then we sort of take it. It's not just that in the game, that kind of location. We have deserts. We have we're in suburbia. We're in forests. Sort of various places that are not known in the sort of Terminator movies that have sort of been out, but we still have that kind of core of making it feel like Terminator, or at least what players and think they know what Terminator means to them. So it was always a fine line to try to keep that in the sort of visuals and the feel of the game.
That's an interesting. So the urban things are interesting to me because when I think Terminator, like there are some, like, especially when we think the flash forward stuff, obviously you see urban environments, but Terminator, I think when we see the like through the characters that we know them, it's a lot of it is this more rural, suburban environments kind of. Did you guys have? I'm assuming it was fun, but I'm curious, kind of when you guys were thinking of those different types of environments, kind of did it change the ways you guys thought of how, say, combat work or these encounters, kind of, or did you kind of think of like, here's with these places first, and then we'll kind of build around that?
It's interesting. Before I answer that, I guess what is interesting is when you look at the Terminator movies and you look at the future war, apart from Terminator Salvation, which is I think sort of the fourth movie, which is sort of set in deserts, which we sort of have missions sort of similar to the sort of settings there. All the settings are in destroyed cities at night. All the sort of future war representation. So it was really, and they're all kind of basically set in Los Angeles or around there. And I think one of the great things that we have with taking the Terminator franchise, how we're doing it, is kind of where else can we go? Because it's always been on the West Coast, Terminator. It's always been set around where the first movie was basically based, because that becomes the sort of blueprint. So within the game that's being released this year, we move a long way from that. As I say, we're in suburbia, and we are in other destroyed cities, but we're also kind of up in the mountains and various places. But and as we move forwards, I'm always interested about kind of what was happening on the East Coast, what was happening in New York at the time, in the future. How's that faring? How's Europe faring? How's Australia? What's Sydney Opera House looking like?
Yeah, those are interesting ones. Yeah, spots like that where like people might not be affected directly as directly. Like, did they target everywhere? Did they really just target urban centers? Yeah, that's a very interesting thought.
It opens up a hell of a lot for us, because if you look at the future that is seen in the movies, it is literally it's the US, it's West Coast, and there's never any indication of what's happening across the world, and that opens up some very interesting paths that will be explored in updates and DLC as we sort of progress. with the game. To go back to your original question there of what we actually chose, a lot of it came from the story that we're sort of telling, and what you get in the game. I mean, if you play the demo and you've got to the end of it, we open up a large map. There's like a map of the US with a number of locations, and you visit a number of these locations. So this is going all the way across the US to kind of Fort Worth and Oklahoma and down into sort of Mexico. So every single sort of mission map that we have is a proper location. You can Google map it. I had a lot of fun kind of jumping in and and matching up in Google Map exactly with the game and kind of Street View and running the game and the Street View at the same time. So everything is real places. So I mean, obviously, when we sort of decided on the locations, we had an idea of what the story at that time was needing. Like if it's a large factory complex that we wanted, okay, well we find a city that's near the path that we're sort of traveling, and sort of find a place in the city that sort of has a factory complex there, or a place that would have housed the factory complex sort of 10 years in the future, and and the maps are kind of made from there. So it's very interesting to sort of jump in and actually match these places up with the reality of where they are at the moment.
No, that is. I appreciate how I'm picturing Lily, like I'm hoping you guys did some sort of equivalent of like a war room and just like actual maps and like marked of like here's where we want stuff.
Yes, yeah. Well, as I said, I mean the game is a road trip across the US. Later in the game, you are moving from sort of different locations, and there's bases starting to appear where you can kind of hire new people and hire new equipment and sort of trade or sell things that you've sort of scavenged. So yeah, it's been interesting sort of mapping that part out. But as I say, it's really interesting looking after the release as well of where we may be going.
Yeah, no,
without giving anything away.
I think they're obviously I don't know anything more than you've said here, and like I'm very intrigued now that you say that. I'm like, yeah, there are a lot of options kind of to think of kind of within this narrative where these other spots and other things to be. Like I always think of like, to me, there's always the like secondary fun of like, I always like movies you like abandoned theme parks or abandoned malls, like abandoned these facilities that we like, what happens to them kind of after so many decades, kind of, is there remnants of them still remaining? What does that look like? What does that do?
Well, I mean, in the game there are various factions that you meet. We have. If you haven't played it, I mean, the main protagonist that you start with is a faction called the Founders, which are kind of the ex-US military. So it's you've got very good sort of military equipment. You've got a kind of military mindset and professionalism, but they are very focused on defeating the machines. Very focused to the point of are they too focused and not taking on board that humanity needs to be saved? It's more about sort of beating the machines. You then have that comes on just after the demo finishes. We have a faction called the Movement, which are kind of the sort of the civilian militia. So these are the people who've risen up from Middle America, from across the states, that are trying to fight back, trying to save their communities, and are forming their own army, so that they are kind of a little bit more. I don't know what the US term. They're hicks in some cases. They're a bit more kind of sort of local. They drive vans with armor slapped on the sides and sort of guns strapped on top of pickups. They have big tractors. They're sort of pulling sort of howitzers. They're a different kind of faction. So that's another faction, and sort of finding out how they have evolved. But then you also have people like, we have a small group of kids called the Rats, who are sort of surviving in a city later in the game, that you kind of interact with and either help or or not help. And we have, the integrators, which are almost kind of sort of hints of the sort of Mad Max Road Warrior, but they've sort of taken on this whole kind of machine religion where they're almost like trying to become machines themselves, and they have really cool hardware that is sort of they will scavenge Legion, which is the sort of the machine's hardware, and create sort of these combinations of Legion tank plus Founder guns, or vice versa, like an Abrams tank with kind of Legion weaponry on it. So you kind of get a different mix there. And again, there's little societies that you sort of meet as you sort of traverse from sort of location to location.
No, that's
so yeah.
That's great. Julie, I feel like we have not been including you a bunch of conversation. I want to make sure I get time, obviously, for you too, as my understanding too. You are Julie, you are the senior brand manager. So I'm assuming you also are a good interface kind of with the licensee and kind of while doing this game. And obviously, since Mark's talked a bunch kind of too, I want to make sure. Let's start though, kind of while we're thinking of this though and talking about the game. If we could dig kind of into the game a bit more, obviously, as we said, this is an RTS. This is this is a strategy game that like really, it's an RTS. This focuses kind of.
It's an RTS.
Yeah, I'm sure I was going to have a moment there. It really focuses on this game, but like it has to feel right. How kind of in the combat was there ways you guys had to really change kind of what people expect from Slytherin games, or kind of make something that is different to kind of make sure that like it still felt like Terminator while still feeling like what people expect from your games?
Well, you mean generally speaking,
I
guess?
Yeah, because like obviously you guys kind of do a bunch of games, but obviously once you throw in the license, there's obviously some change kind of in there, and making sure that like it still feels right to both what people experience your guys at games, and like people who expect certain things from the license as a whole too.
Yeah, well, let's say that, Slytherin is known for a variety of things, and the company's strategy is focused on like bringing more people to the genre. And we do that by collaborating with well-known IPs. As Mark was saying at the beginning of the interview, we began with Battlestar Galactica some years ago, and then we have Warhammer franchises, one Starship Trooper game, the Stargate game, and the Terminator Dark Fate Defiance game releasing soon. So basically, the company strategy is based like on the understanding that our target audience is like primarily adult males between the 20 and the 45 years old. So that means that many of them grew up with some of the most famous sci-fi IPs, like from the 90s and the 2000s. So this is why we are like publishing and in some cases developing games like Terminator Dark Fate Defiance.
No, that makes sense. Let's kind of jump into while we're thinking of Terminator Defiance, and we're kind of talking about this game as a whole. Let's jump a bit into the combat on it. As we've kind of alluded to, there's been demos kind of out on this, and you guys were kind enough to kind of provide me with the demo keys. I got to play it a bit. I want to start with saying the combat honestly feels to me, I think, really good, feels like large scale, and it feels like there's like you're in the middle of a battle, but like there's something bigger going around you. I'm kind of curious if we could kind of start by laying the foundation for people like who haven't seen the demo, really haven't seen this game, kind of, as we said, it's an RTS, but can we talk about like the troops, or maybe like a troop or two that stands out to you guys, stand out that the player can kind of control or might face kind of on these experiences?
Yeah, sure. On the founders, for example, you've got the ATGM, which is the this sort of self-guided anti-tank guided missile, which you have a unit of 3. I think you can upgrade them up to 4 within a squad, and I would say it's the most satisfying weapon in the game. You have a sort of a self-guided missile that has a very long distance, and you can kind of see it gliding across the battlefield. And if you get a hit, it sort of takes out a sort of enemy tank, which is great. But you have a capacity of 4 missiles at any one time, so they're very, very powerful. But you need to keep them supplied with missiles. So one of the things that we have in the game is we have ammo numbers and supply functionality. So there are certain static points within the game where you can supply units, move them to a supply depot, get them in range, and they will constantly be sort of resupplying their ammo. We have mobile supply platforms. Get a van close to them, and again, it can become a supply point. And we also have certain vehicles that you can kind of jump in to resupply your units with. So I think my favorite is probably the ATGM squad of the founders. From a founder's point of view, we have a mix of kind of infantry vehicles and sort of artillery units. So from a vehicle point of view, I have this. It's great having these kind of heavy tractors pulling around, towing heavy howitzers that are these kind of long range artillery units. Just because it's so sort of not quite steampunk, but it's like these armored tractor vehicles chugging along, usually with the voiceover of the people who drive it are these kind of they sound like truck drivers, and there's a real feel of solidness to these units. I'm trying to sort of show how they are very different. And you also have obviously Legion, the sort of Terminators, and the units there range from the Wolf Pack, which are kind of similar to what we see Boston Dynamics producing, kind of robot dogs, but with sort of heads and guns strapped to them, through to kind of spider units that sort of have various weapons strapped to them, up to that kind of these huge kind of chunky tanks that they have, and they're all very different, and they all have kind of very unique pros and cons on the battlefield. Like the Legion tank is incredibly slow, but incredibly powerful if it gets close to you. So yeah, there's a very sort of distinct amount of vehicles and unit types, and the different factions have a very sort of different, distinct sort of play style as well, with the movement having more sort of these kind of vehicles that you're sort of towing about. I don't know if that answers your question.
Oh, it totally does. Okay, so there's the few factions kind of going on in this game. Throughout development, and maybe even now, kind of, are you guys noticing a trend of like players favoring a certain faction, or has it been kind of relatively kind of even distribution between the factions?
I'd say it's relatively even. I mean, in the campaign, as I said, you start as the founders, and then you start attracting the movement and some other kind of factions into the mix. So you become in the single player campaign a mishmash of these different factions, and as your army is persistent from mission to mission, and you can manage them in between, it allows you to kind of create the army that you want. You can sell all of the movement pickup trucks and just try to keep the founders vehicles, or you can recruit people in from the movement. It's kind of up to you. You can kind of upgrade abilities and upgrade different units. From sort of skirmish and multiplayer, we allow people to play founders, the movement, or Legion. So you can have. So I think that's the interesting point about what people will be choosing. And we get, the demo went out with with one skirmish map, which was just founders versus Legion, or Legion versus founders, depending if you wanted to play as the machines. Do I have a favorite? I actually like playing the founders, probably because of the ATGM. because then
it's definitely sounded like the founders were your favorite going into this.
yeah,
But
it's what we.
it seems like the most
It's what,
honestly, it seems like very much like the now I don't know if it seems like a very unique squad too, and I feel like it probably plays with stuff that like makes Terminator a fun license to play with.
it is. Oh, it is. I mean, it's. I think back to when I was a student a long time ago. I can remember having a poster in my lounge. This is back in the, whew, you know, end of the 80s, let's say. A huge Arnold Terminator, the classic Terminator poster in my lounge, and to think, kind of 30 years odd later, you in some way crafting a sliver of Terminator lore in some way. It's just like it's. I mean, it's a great place to be, and it's a very fun toy box to be playing into, or playing in.
No, that sounds great. So as we're talking again, the game is Terminator Dark Fate Defiance. As of now, it says that you guys are listed on Steam for Q4 2023. I'm just kind of checking, and obviously, as vague or as not vague as you guys need to be or want to be. What is kind of the current plan for release of this game? Have you guys said anything else or any public plans kind of in the works for what's next release?
For the release of the game,
Yes.
it's I can probably say it's definitely going to be 2023. So it's definitely going to be Q4. I think we'll be announcing an official date very, very soon. But yeah, I mean, we said on a number of occasions, it's going to be sometime in winter. So, my gut feeling would be look out at some point in December for a release for the game.
Yeah, we will say that officially in a couple of weeks. So
yeah,
you can absolutely follow us on our channels, and you will see the release date very, very soon.
So that sounds very soon from at least from the time we're recording. Like it's like even because even now we're recording this at the end of October. Like that means the worst. People waiting a few months kind of for it. It sounds like.
Yes, yeah, we're close.
We're close.
So as a producer on this, it's kind of the finish line is there. So it's making sure that everything is ready for when you get to release. There's still a few little bits, a few little tweaks. It was great with the demo. We got lots of feedback on that. So that's sort of making some minor changes on the game from feedback from players. So, but yeah, it's close.
Perfect. No, and I want to say thank you to both of you to kind of talking maybe this morning, at least this morning for me, kind of about Terminator Dark Fate Defiance. You guys are both part of Slytherin. As I like to end interviews like this or get to the tail end of them, I like to leave the floor to the guests, kind of to anything on the game that you feel is like a standout point or anything else kind of that you guys want to talk about or kind of make a point on the game. Kind of, the floor is yours for any other sales pitch related or kind of content on this game.
I guess from my point of view, what we show with the demo, the first 3 missions in the campaign have been very much almost like tutorial in nature, very sort of hand-holding, quite structured. It's kind of telling a story. And one of the things that does open up literally on the mission after the demo is you will find that the missions are very much more open with multiple factions and multiple sort of secondary objectives that you can or can't or don't need to actually succeed in. But the impact of what you do in a mission impacts your army and later missions as well. And just trying to, I just wanted to sort of say that for me is a big part of the game, where it's not just this kind of linear mission. Your decisions early on will have impact later in the mission, later in the game.
And I just would like to add, to build up on what Mark was saying, that apart from the action-packed missions that will come later on the early missions, that of course are useful to teach people like the main mechanics of the gameplay, so to kind of introduce people to also the story and well, let's say how the game works, I would say that also like the narrative aspect of the game is really important. This is something that Mark absolutely knows, as like he spent much time on the storytelling and on like how to convey to people these like narrative driven gameplay. So that is a really interesting part of the game. So action and narrative.
I really hope everybody enjoys the feel and the atmosphere that is created with the characters and the voiceovers that we have, because we have we have over 130 characters in the game, all voiced, and from my opinion, it tells a great story and sounds great.
No, and that sounds great. I want to say again, thank you for both of you for talking today. Again, we are talking about Terminator, Dark Fate, Defiance. You guys are Slytherin. You could definitely find you guys everywhere on that. And again, wishlist the game. It comes out, sounds like December of this year, or at least Q4 of this year. And I want to say again, thank you to both of you, and enjoy the rest of your day.
Cheers, Mike. Thanks.
Thank
Good
you.
speaking with you.
The SWW show and all of its affiliate podcasts are podcast by me, Mike Maroney, and AJ Losi, sometimes by our contributors, including Corey King. You can follow the SWW show on social media at the SWW show, or sooner or later you go to patreon.com/SWW to help us out. Thank you, and we hope you enjoy the rest of your day.